Tina Patrick Pastorelli wrote in this week, I recently started listening to your podcast on Amazon Music. I'm addicted. You have validated so many of my feelings associated with raising young kiddos at an older age. No one in our life really gets it. Our girls are not blood related as their mom was a friend of our daughter, and we wanted to get them out of a shelter. 6 years later, thank you. Tina, thank you so much for reaching out. Reading your message is exactly why I started this project. First, I want to acknowledge the incredible leadership you and your family have shown. Stepping in to move those girls from a shelter into a sanctuary 6 years ago wasn't just a kind act, it was a high-level rescue mission. Even though they aren't blood relations, you've proven that legacy is built through presence and commitment, not just DNA. And I think we all know what you mean when you say no one really gets it. That isolation is one of the heaviest parts of the personal weight we carry. We understand the exhaustion, the club sandwich layers of responsibility, and the unique joy that comes from seeing a child finally settle into safety. You aren't just older kiddos, you are the invisible CEO of a vital new future for those girls, and I'm so glad you found us on Amazon Music. Which brings up an important point. If this podcast has helped you, whether you're on Apple or Spotify or whatever platform you listen on, please leave a note in the comments. It makes a difference in the algorithms. The more comments, the more listeners we reach that need to hear. On episode 30, we met a grandmother in the middle of a legal minefield. At that time, she chose to remain anonymous. Today, the mines have been cleared. Mary Hels-Jager is back to share the update we've all been waiting for. The adoption is final. We're discussing the exact courtroom moment the system woke up, the silly clerical error that almost derailed the process, and what it feels like to finally baptize a child into your family legacy after years of waiting. So if you're drowning in red tape, this is your survival guide for the finish line. Welcome to Grandparents Raising Grandchildren, Nurturing Through Adversity. In this podcast, we will delve deep into the challenges and triumphs of grandparents raising grandchildren. As we navigate the complexities of legal, financial, and emotional support, I invite you to join us on a journey of exploring thoughts, feelings, and beliefs surrounding this growing segment of our society. Drawing from real stories and expert advice, we will explore the nuances of child rearing for children who have experienced trauma and offer valuable resources to guide you through the intricate journey of kinship care. We'll discuss how we can change the course of history by rewriting our grandchildren's future, all within a supportive community that understands the unique joys and struggles. This podcast was made especially for you. Welcome to a community where your voice is heard, your experiences are valued, and your journey is honored. I have to tell you, seeing Mary smile today is a different experience than our last talk. Last time she was on pins and needles. Today, she has permanent authority. I recently went through my own messy middle, moving closer to family, dealing with my father's passing, and helping my mother transition to assisted living. It reminded me that our lives aren't sitcoms. They are club sandwiches. 4 generations of needs stacked on top of each other. Mary's story is a reminder that even when the system is slow, and even when life is a triple-decker of chaos, winning is possible. We aren't just babysitting, we're securing a successor. Mary, the last time we spoke, you were navigating a protective custody situation with a lot of uncertainty. And then this November in 2025, you actually finalized your adoption papers with your granddaughter.
Yes. Yes, we did.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was a long process, to say the least.
Oh gosh, it's not just a piece of paper, and I know you fought hard for it. What was the exact moment that you knew that the tide had actually turned in your favor?
So I want to say it was June or maybe July of 2024. We were in court, virtual, but in court, and the mom did not show. And I had concerns regarding visits. And the mom had disclosed to us that she had been a victim of sexual assault entering her apartment. She was involved with a gang, and this was an attack from a high level gang member. And so she didn't want to go to the police. She did
Mm.
tell the caseworker that she had fears for her life, that people were following her. She was not doing drug screens. She was not making progress in her case and showing a lot of instability. And there were people in her life that were controlling her. She disclosed this during a visit, and part of the visit was leaving my granddaughter, stepping away and leaving her with mom and caseworker and hoping for the best. And those visits at the time were in a public park in Chicago. So at any point, any gang member could have shown up, something could have
Mhm.
happened. And the court rarely asked me to speak, usually didn't have the opportunity, but for whatever reason, they asked, did I have something to say? And I started to talk about that, and they gave me a breakout room and gave me the opportunity to speak as to what was going on. And I said, somebody here in this system needs to wake up, and you need to tell me how you're going to protect my granddaughter, how
Mhm.
you're going to protect me during this visit, how you are going to protect the parent, and what are you going to do for your caseworker if somebody comes um,
Yeah.
shooting and with the gang that she's involved with that would not be out of the question that could happen. So I
Mhm.
said, tell me, how are you
Yeah.
going to protect us? Are you looking for this, at the time, 61-year-old grandmother to throw her body over all of them and protect them? What's your game plan? And
Uh,
they woke up. They finally woke up and said, we're going to have to assess safety. And they agreed to suspend visits until they could do a better assessment of the mother, her living situation, the people she was, uh, with, all of it. And finally, someone heard us. And I think when visits stopped happening, I think my granddaughter settled because they were
mm,
traumatic. I think she sensed that things weren't safe.
sure.
A lot of things just started to move, and I felt like they were finally forced to really assess the situation and see it for the danger that it was.
I know what was happening when I spoke with you the last time. I know how much you've stayed on top of this case and how challenging it was in your state to get the kind of support that you needed. And finally, you got it.
Yes, finally.
How has that atmosphere in your home changed now that the visits and the DCFS check ins are officially over?
Everything is so much more relaxed. We're just parenting as usual, dealing with the normal day to day things that come up. We're not worried about, short notice of a visit. Let's get the house clean and act like we always live this way. I mean, because everybody does it. No matter how much you get to know your caseworker and everything, and they get
Yeah.
that you're a family, that you're busy. There's all this preparation. You feel like you've always got to put that front on. And we really liked our
Yeah.
caseworker. I mean, I enjoyed the visits with her. She was like a bright spot in all of it. But still,
Mm.
it is what it is. You're being assessed. The child is being assessed in your home. It's very artificial. So now we just get to live our lives. And it took a little bit getting used to it. At first we were kind of numb. The adoption happened, and then we were just like, what's next? We're so used to being on pins and needles, and now we're not.
I see you smiling more than you were the last time I saw
Very
you.
very stressed out before. So afraid for our granddaughter, for, just because you don't have control. You have no legal
Yeah.
control and you're just dependent on others.
Before we jump back into today's episode, I want to talk to you about something incredibly close to my heart. If you're a grandparent raising a grandchild, I need 10 minutes of your time for something that could change the future of your family and thousands of others. I'm personally supporting and filling out Jill Bryant's new survey, The Subjective Well-Being of Grandparents Raising Grandchildren. Jill isn't just an academic. She's spent years researching the deep complexities of counseling and the lived reality of kinship care as both a professor and a grandparent raising a grandchild. Her work focuses on the complete subjective well-being of kinship caregivers. And it's exactly what it sounds like, a practical map for moving families out of the initial trauma of unexpected custody and into a space of long-term stability and advocacy. Listeners, taking this 10-minute survey gives our advocates the timely, real-world data that they need to fight for the funding and structural support your family deserves right now. I'm doing it, and I strongly encourage you to do the same. We've made it incredibly easy to find. We will provide the link right in our ad notes, and it's pinned right at the top of our home webpage at grandparents-raising-grandchildren.org. Let's make our voices heard. Back then, we talked about your granddaughter's initial social disconnect. She wasn't crying and engaging. Now that she's 65% of her life into your care and officially your daughter, what does her attachment profile look like today?
I think so much more normal. She is a typical demanding 4-year-old. She wants what she wants. She gets everything she needs and a lot of what she wants. She borders on being spoiled, so she's a little shocked when she doesn't get an immediate reaction from us. So very different than the infant she was when we first got her. And she didn't even look for interaction with people. She's a little bit on the clingy side. It's hard because it's me and my husband and 2 adult children that live in the house. So she gets a lot of adult attention. So she's not good at not getting attention. Some of that is just the unusual dynamic of a 4-year-old having a 19-year-old brother and a 21-year-old sister. But
That's
it
awesome, though.
is. She gets a lot of attention, but I still see a little of the clinginess because I do think that the early neglect, being left for long periods of time in a car seat or in a stroller, strapped in and pushed in a room and ignored, I think that has left, a kind of a permanent mark on her.
All of these kids have permanent marks. You mentioned in the past that the system often dismisses the expertise of the caregivers. During the adoption process, how did you and your husband, with your backgrounds in HR and project management, use your skills to keep moving the case forward?
So for me, I work mostly in employee relations and I do a lot of investigations into harassment and discrimination and violence in the workplace and performance issues, performance failures, um, personal conflicts. So I'm always investigating. And I think for me, I can speak the way DCFS speaks. I know what it is that they do, what it is they're looking for. I understand the reports that they're putting together, why they're looking at things the way they look at. So that's easy for me to see their side of things. But I also have to be careful not to get too aggressive because you don't ever want
I'm
to
sure.
you don't want them to become estranged, to take care of your child and not be at odds. So it's a fine line. And, with my husband more, I would say, I don't think as much that he kind of leaned on his work. He's more of the charming of the 2 of us. I kind of joke that people like him better. Like even my own parents, I think, like my husband better. he's just a friendlier person. And I know the caseworker always got a kick out of him when he would bring our granddaughter to the visits. She really liked talking to him. I guess that was his superpower, right? Being charming.
We all have our superpowers. What was the biggest bottleneck that you think that you faced during the final stretch of the adoption, and how did you end up getting through it?
It was kind of silly in retrospect, but we had this hearing where they made the decision that they were proposing termination of parental rights, involuntary termination of parental rights. And we thought that that was it, that they were going to propose it, and that they would get one opportunity for a hearing, and the decision would be made, right? Well, that was in October. And then in January, we finally had the hearing, but it wasn't the hearing we thought it was going to be. It was to go over termination of parental rights, what the steps were to make sure the mom understood it. And then we met again in February for like 10 minutes, which was just to schedule the trial. Okay, so it's October, November, December, January, February. So they go to schedule the trial, and mom decides that she's going to voluntarily relinquish. She decides she doesn't want to go through the termination of parental rights. There are some legal benefits to her doing that. It closes her case, and then she doesn't have that on her own record as a parent that she had to go through TPR. So we have that hearing, and she agrees she's going to voluntarily relinquish. But somebody in the system marks in the paperwork that our granddaughter is a male. So they throw it out. Sorry, we can't proceed, because when you adopt, if that's where this is headed, you choose to adopt, we have to identify the correct child. We can't say you're adopting a male.
Yeah. Probably a good thing.
Right? So sorry, but we're going to reschedule. So then we scheduled for another month, and mom didn't show because she was once again a victim of domestic violence, and she was hospitalized. She had been beaten and was hospitalized. So we then had to reschedule again. And then at the next hearing, she did finally say that she was voluntarily relinquishing and she was making the decision being of sound mind. So that was October through June. All of that. Yeah.
Wow.
They began the TPR process October of 2024, but it took until November 2025 for the adoption. Yeah.
So there was a year in there that you had her that you were still waiting to find out.
Right.
For grandparents that are listening who are currently drowning in a lot of this red tape, what is one piece of legal or systematic advice you wish you'd known on day one?
On day one, I guess I wish I would have understood that the system, DCFS, however you want to phrase that, it's a little different in every state, but in most states, they are required to place children with fictive kin, family or fictive kin, friends, before they place with strangers. They are to make that effort, and they are to provide the supports to those family members. And in many states, the same supports that they provide foster parents. But what they'll try to do is bully you into taking on all the transportation or supervising visits. They try to push a lot on you and hold this threat over your head that if you don't do these things, we're going to take the child and put them with strangers, which they can't do. I mean, so I would say you need to be prepared for that. Just know it's going to happen. You have to know it's going to happen. So the moment you're placed with a grandchild, I'm sorry to say, you need to figure out what your rights are. You need to be prepared for the threats that are going to come your way, because they're going to do this because they don't want to be inconvenienced. And one of the things that I have heard in some states that DCFS will do is they'll bring a child to your doorstep and say, if you don't take this child as a grandparent, we're going to put them in the system. And of course, every grandparent says, please don't do that. And then they take the child and then they get no stipend, no assistance, no medical card. right?
That's what happened to me.
Right. But what they're actually doing is they're trying to close the case, which they should not do because it's their responsibility to work that case, make sure the parent is progressing compliant in their case plan and all that. But what they're doing is shirking the work onto the family. I don't quite know what the fix is because I'm fortunate. Illinois is very, very slow in many respects. However, when it comes to fictive kin, they are very good. Our governor has done a lot to try to ensure that DCFS places with family and friends and that they give them the support. So we're fortunate in that respect. But I've heard from a lot of grandparents that that's not the case in their states. I will say
Yes,
one other
that's
thing
true.
that I hear a lot of grandparents push back on, and one of those things is when you're asked to train as a foster parent and they think, well, I'm not doing this for strangers' kids. These are just my kids, my family. I don't want to go through this process. I don't want to do a background check, or I don't want to go through all this exhaustive training. I'm stressed. I'm busy. Do it anyway, because they're going to allow you to keep the kids while you're doing it. They're going to be gentle with you with the amount of time it takes. But that training, it teaches you about the system. It teaches you about the resources. It teaches you about everything that's going to happen in court, what the steps are of a case. Um, it also, there are parts of the training which are specifically training you about trauma. Because as a foster parent, just the fact that a child has been removed from their home is trauma in itself. You may think, well, it's my grandchild. I know my grandchild. But what you might have come to accept as just normal to that child or part of their personality may not be that at all. It may be trauma.
Yeah, right,
And this
right.
will prepare you to be a better parent for that child and to know what kind of resources to ask for. And most of the training now, I think, is available online. So you have a lot of flexibility when you do it. And it's not going there in person like it was 10 years ago. So definitely take them up on it. And in some states, that monthly stipend, sometimes it's higher if you've trained as a foster parent and you're not required to take more children in, but you might have more of a benefit.
Yes, I wish we'd done that because if we had done that, we would have gotten a stipend, and we don't get a stipend because of that. We just wanted to get our grandchildren and bring them home
And I
because
understand
they
that
were suffering.
the fear factor is so huge.
But if I had known that and someone had said to me, "Well, here's what we can do," that wasn't presented to me that way. And they were not looking out for my best interest. In the state of Texas where we got the kids, they're so overburdened that, and our case, which was a bad case, they said one of the better cases that they were trying to deal with. So they just wanted to move that child out of the way. And when I tried to recontact them, they didn't want anything to do with me. They were like, those kids are with good people and we're not going to worry about them and we're moving on
Hmm.
to the next. That's great advice to parents because we do want to ensure that our kids are in the best situation they can be in as soon as possible, but it also has had a long-term effect on us
Sure.
financially, and had I had the trauma education, it would have been very helpful.
Right. And we had
Yeah, I
already
agree with
had
you.
it, because we were former foster parents, but
Mm,
we did also go
mhm.
through adoption training leading up to that, which was kind of a nice refresher. It's much shorter, but it was a nice refresher on it too. But we did actually end up getting counseling for my granddaughter, which was another thing. Initially, we were told, oh, well, she's too young for play therapy. Then come to find out that no, there are specialists that deal with infants that have had trauma, abuse and neglect and can work with very, very small young children. And that was other information that we weren't given, which we just by chance got from our county. We were looking for a Head Start program and they introduced the idea of it. And Again, our caseworker, even though she didn't have all of those resources and she was in a different county that made it hard, she signed off on it right away. The moment we asked for it, she was really great at giving us every resource she possibly could and approving it, making the financial things happen that needed to happen on the back end.
That's great. I'm glad you brought that up. I know that even with a win, that there's scars. And I know that you have 3 other children that all have neurodiverse issues. And I know that the whole threat of removal had a big impact on your family. How are they healing now that that threat is gone?
Boy, I will say for my husband and daughter, both of them, but especially my daughter, it's been huge for her. It was a constant worry that, that our granddaughter was going to be taken and harmed.
Mhm.
And it added a lot to her anxiety. And she didn't understand. She's 21, but still young and not having to deal with this, didn't understand all the legal steps. And with every hearing, she would say, "Is it done yet? Is it done yet? Is she ours? I mean, is she safe?" And we'd have to say, "Well, no, that's that's just this hearing, and that's just that hearing, and now we have to wait 2 months." The stress on her, it was a lot, and I think now she is so settled, and what's interesting between her and my son that live at home, our granddaughter, I wanna say it was like 8 or 9 months before the adoption happened, she just started calling us mom and dad, and then that wasn't auntie anymore, it was sister, and it wasn't uncle anymore, it was brother, and she just something snapped, and that's what she saw us as, and that's what she stuck with.
Wow.
Yeah, on her own.
Shows how deep that
Yeah,
settling went for
right.
her and for the other
Yeah, and
kids.
I think it's
Yeah.
when she
I'm so glad to hear
yeah, and I
that.
think it was about at the point where when her mom made the decision to voluntarily relinquish, and I don't know what she understood of the conversations around her, but she must have understood. It's okay. I get I'm staying here. This is my place.
Yes. Yes. I know that your granddaughter's mother was originally your foster
Uh-huh.
daughter. Are you aware at all of what is going on with her
No.
now?
In court, they gave her my husband's email address. That's the contact we kind of agreed to, and she could email and check and see, you know, how her daughter was doing, updates or whatever. She's never reached out. So, I don't think she's in a good place. She didn't continue with services because even after termination of parental rights, if the family, for a period of time, for the family of origin, they will give them some services if they need assistance with housing and just different things. She never reached out to anyone, but there is always unfortunately, there is a potential for trafficking, which is why, future contact, we have to tightly control that.
I'm sure. How does your granddaughter deal with knowing what's going on with her biological mother?
A little confused by it and also very protective, kind of defensive of her mom.
Yeah,
And
I think
she didn't
that's
want to hear anything
natural.
negative about her. She told us, and this is coming from a 3-year-old, that if anyone said anything bad about her mom, they were going to jail. You could not say
Uh-huh.
anything bad about her. But the depth of her understanding was incredible. We did go bring her into counseling, and we were very concerned about, are we saying the wrong things? How do we describe this? We have a life book that we were sharing with her with pictures and telling her story, and some of the things were very upsetting, but it's what DCFS encourages you to do, and we thought, well, maybe we need to back off. And then also, at what point do we say to her, mom is unsafe? Because we need to tell her why she isn't having visits and why, all the things, right? And while she was in therapy, she referred to the old house where the old people lived, and she met people she used to live with. And she said, they just need the right medication. And I said, what do you mean by that? And she said, they take bad medication. If they could just take the right medicine, they would be okay. And I just was like flabbergasted, she's hearing
What do you think she meant? She meant that literally or figuratively?
substance abuse, and with her mom's mental health issues, that somehow she had connected that she just needs the right medicine. And I said, well, I asked her, what do you mean? And she says, well, when you give me my medicine, I feel better. Tylenol. That's, Tylenol and antibiotics is the only thing she's ever
Yeah.
taken. But she said, when I'm sick, you give me my medicine and I feel better. And they just need the right medicine. And I just thought, wow, and that's age 3. So you know what? They're
Yes.
hearing something and they're absorbing, and something is going on that you need to address.
I've said this to other people. At first, it was really difficult for me to have these conversations with my granddaughter, things that I certainly don't want to talk about, and I thought perhaps she didn't. But then I realized she's seen these things. They have to be put in their place. And I'm amazed, and it's sad that that they've seen all this, but then it helps to be able to have conversations because they really can understand so much. We have to be delicate about the way in which we say things, and I'm not specific all the time because there are things they don't comprehend. For instance, sin versus drugs. You know, when you're referring to sexual things, they're they're things they don't really understand, but then they want to know, why did mommy do this? And I saw her do that. I'm amazed at how well they're able to handle it. I'm really glad to hear she's doing well. The key thing is helping them understand that they are so loved and making those connections with them because everybody needs a mother and you're her mother
Mhm.
now. I think they can understand that mommy didn't have the tools to be a mother, but God or however you want to refer to it is always going to make sure you have a mom that can take good care of you, right? I know you have I know you have chickens and goats and a house full of adults and such a lovely sanctuary. Now that you've won this battle, how do you manage parenting a toddler? How is that going?
So this is a difficult question, and I thought, I could just smile and say it's great, whatever, and it's not. So managing not well. I I'll correct myself on that. I think I'm managing well, but is it calm and peaceful? I'm putting off thinking maybe at some point I can have a break at a later date. So a week after our adoption, my 85-year-old mother fell and broke 4 ribs and ended up hospitalized and then in rehab. And we had been looking for a nice independent living retirement home for her, but she developed pneumonia and took a turn for the worse. And so we had to change that and start looking for assisted living. And I'm her durable power of attorney for healthcare and for finances. So that became my job to take care of, in addition to also preparing her home to put it on the market, sell it, dealing with the real estate, with the contractors, with the lawyers, with everything else while dealing with her health needs. That's just now settling down a little bit. She's in assisted living. It took her a while to make the mental adjustment. It's not what she wanted, but she had some medical setbacks. And here we are. So it's been, raising a toddler and a couple of adult children and being a grandmother to 3 other kids that I see babysit at least once a week, and having an 85-year-old mom whose healthcare I'm still somewhat managing, and I work full time, and I have to work full time.
So, Mary, yes. Well, Mary, this is what I tell everyone, and I'm so glad that you're sharing the messy side
It's a mess.
because it is a mess and it's our beautiful mess. And I just went through the same thing. My dad committed suicide
Sorry.
in June. The day that I was putting in an offer on a house, We moved to be closer to family so that we could get help. That all happened the same day. My mother called right away, because she and I are very close. I flew down there while my husband was taking care of the kids, had to manage all the funeral arrangements for him, help my mother sell her house, move her into assisted living. These are our stories, and every single one, there isn't one that's clean. We need each other. We need these stories because we need to hear that I need it. I hate to say this. I'm so sorry that's happened to you, Mary, but that helps me understand that my mess is just as messy as your mess. We're all just trying to find the joy and peace while grieving, while coping, and the sense of community and knowing that there are almost 3 other million people like us out there in this situation and still trying to teach our grandkids a better way and still trying to just do the best we can. I think it's brave of us all, and we need to pat ourselves on the back for doing, someone, I have to remember this because I'm so hard on myself. I'm so much harder on myself than I was when I was young. And I guess it's because I just visualize this part of my life being very different than it is. And
I'm sorry to laugh.
no, laugh. You gotta laugh. You have to laugh. Someone told me if the only thing that happens is that child knows that you are there for them and you have made that connection, it really doesn't matter what else happens. It really doesn't matter if we don't pull together the perfect life. It doesn't matter that we make mistakes, that we fall apart, that we say the wrong things often, that we, you know, it really doesn't matter because that child will always know that they're loved. And so many kids out there don't have that much. And if they don't have that, their lives are not very good. So so give yourself a pat on the back and just say that what I've done is enough, and we get by the way we get by. And, we're keeping our families together, and really that's all that matters.
So the way I joke about it is, they refer to us as the sandwich generation, right? Because you may have your dealing with your own kids or your adult children while you have your aging parents. Well, we are the triple decker. We're not just, there's two slices of bread. We are the triple decker because
You've got the
you've got
kids,
the parents
the
and the
grandmothers,
kids and the grandchildren.
grandkids.
And then just the way you take care of your spouse with each
We
other.
are like the club sandwich
Yes, so
generation.
we're the club sandwich generation, right? It's 4 generations of, so when you
Mhm.
said, mentioned, like, executive functioning, that's the thought that I had was, um, how did you put it? Um,
Boardroom,
sanity or whatever.
CEO, sanity.
Of course,
I don't
one of my
remember.
adult children just walked in looking for gas money here. I'm so sorry because
No, no, you know what? I was doing an interview the other day, and my grandson, I thought I had the door locked while I
okay,
was
close the door.
interviewing, and my grandson came in and, and, I said,
Club
"Excuse me,
sandwich.
this is my life." Interruption. I love it. I think it's
Club
perfect that
sandwich.
your son came in looking for gas money.
Because she lost her debit card, so now she can't she there's no way to put gas in the car. Lauren.
I love it, Mary. I'm so glad that I hope others listening find the courage to share their stories because it really does help somebody else that needs to hear. Um, the messiness is definitely a part of it. Uh we are not a commercial on
Mhm.
TV.
Right. There's no sitcom here.
No
No,
sitcom.
yeah.
I heard recently there was gonna be a grandparent program. I go, they'll never be able to recreate this. People won't laugh.
It'll be all warm and fuzzy and,
Yeah, it'll be warm and fuzzy, and we'll go, "I'm not listening to that show." It is not like that. So I'm asking all of the people that I'm interviewing 3 questions: a systematic question, a taboo question, and a policy question. I want to ask you, since you've seen the foster care system fail a 13-year-old and nearly fail a baby, if you were CEO of social services, what's the first rule you would delete to make adoption easier for kinship families?
Well, I would
Or should I
say,
ask you, what would you add?
yeah, so well, there's one rule that they need to stick with. It's there, and they need to stick with it, and that's when a child has spent the last 15 months out of the last 22 months in care, they're supposed to begin permanency. They're always planning for permanency. They have concurrent goals, like what happens if reunification doesn't work and but at the 15-month point of the last 22 months, if a child is in care, they're supposed to say, okay, we need to close the case. This isn't, the parent isn't progressing. We need to give this child permanency. And they don't stick to that timeline. For infants, it's really supposed to be more like 12 months because in the life of an infant, and
Yeah,
look,
a
we got
year
our
is a lot.
granddaughter at 8 months. She is now 4 years and whatever, 4 years and 15 days. So, if you're taking an infant and you have them for a year, they've already spent most of their life with you. So how do you now do reunification? They need to stick to those timelines. Those are federal, and states don't stick to them. They just blaze right on by them. And I think it's a hard process to terminate parental rights. And I think that they sit back and lounge on their laurels and say, this child is with family. There's no urgency. But that child they feel that they unsettled. They feel that there's a question mark over
Yes.
their head. They don't know where they're going to be. They feel the tension in the household. They feel the fear that you have when you worry about a child going back to parents who can't keep that child safe. So, yeah, they need to stick to that. And I think the other thing that I have learned is the handoff between caseworker to adoption caseworker, and then after adoption, the post-adoption caseworker. They never give you the post-adoption caseworker's name. They just tell you if you have problems at a later date, call us. We could call our attorney, but that post-adoption caseworker might be someone your child might need intensive therapy with a specialist that's hard to find. They may have medical needs or educational things that arise from prenatal drug exposure. I mean, all kinds of things that maybe you just don't know about. And they can give you those supports and just fast track you to where you need to be. But that handoff is so clunky between Kate. We never met our adoption caseworker. I don't think we ever spoke to her. She just is someone that moved paper. And the only, all of that to reach guardianship or adoption, you should know going forward because the case is closing and the caseworker is disappearing, right? You need to know, who do I reach out to? So
Yeah. I think that's a very good point. And I mean, it's a really rough system. And probably a lot of that has to do with the fact that people really don't want to recognize or admit the fact that it's a problem. There's a mental health problem in this country that people don't want to deal with or throw money at, you know.
they sure throw a lot of money at it when they do a poor job because now it's generational.
Yes, and that's the whole purpose of this book that I'm writing, is to talk about really um the fact that we're passing these mental health issues down from one family to another, and if we were to have a system for dealing with this more effectively and efficiently, children would get better care. So, the taboo question I have for you, this is a tough one. Do you think it's okay for a grandmother to feel relief that the biological mother isn't changing their lifestyle because it makes the adoption more secure?
So for me, I don't have concerns about the adoption not being secure. I mean, maybe it's the state I'm in. It's very difficult to reach this point. And once you do termination of parental rights and voluntarily or involuntary, and you go through adoption, it's done. They're not going to overturn that. It would have to be, that's not true. If it's guardianship, guardianship is a different matter that they can overturn and will if a parent changes their life and comes back and is in recovery and all those things. So I don't have, um, at this point, I'm not worried about the adoption, but during the case, I have to admit, I felt at the same time I was sad that my foster daughter wasn't pulling her life together because I thought for sure when she lost
Mhm.
her daughter, that would be the thing. That would be the thing that caused her to really stop and say, I've got to change. But it wasn't, right? But there were times where I felt, well, maybe it's for the best because if she does everything she's supposed to do and, you know, pulls herself together, it isn't going to be permanent. And I was so fearful that she would get her daughter back and then it would just be, she would be one boyfriend friend away from being in another abusive situation. Or she would start abusing drugs again, or lose a job and start prostituting, or any of all the horrible things that could happen. But now that the adoption is finalized, I guess I don't feel that way. Would love to see her get her life together. I still care about her. I'm sad for her. I worry about her. And because she is a product of the foster system and a failed adoption, um, her adoptive parents terminated their parental rights. I think she knows too well what it is to disrupt a child. And I don't believe, as long as she is of sound mind, that she would even attempt to do anything because she would not want that for her daughter to lose her family and to be moved. So I don't worry about that. Quite honestly, I wish she could pull herself together because then she could be a part of her daughter's life.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. But I think perhaps there could be better checkpoints in place to secure that a child doesn't go back to their parents before before the system is tested.
So that's why we were not going to accept guardianship. And they seem to want to push that on us because they said, well, you have this relationship with the mom. Why wouldn't you want guardianship? And maybe at a later date, she would be able to parent. And I said, not on your life, because I understand what you're trying to do. You're tired of working this case and you want me to work it for you. Because the moment you take guardianship on and DCFS disappears, if that parent comes forward and challenges you in court, it's just you and them. It becomes your legal battle, your legal expenses. And how do you legally, what power do you have to force that parent to submit to a background check, to be able to inspect their home, to be able to make them submit to drug screens? You don't have any legal ability to do that. You can't enforce that.
Especially if you're in the same state.
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, you have no right? You have no
I mean, if you're
power.
out of state, it's
You have no power.
right, right, yeah,
So
right,
so it's
yep.
you and them in court, and to me, those odds didn't feel good. I saw too much BS in court, and with mom pulling herself together for 20, 30 minutes, just knowing that she was gonna go right back to abusing the moment she got out of. So, um yeah, if I was in a guardianship situation, that would be different, but we pushed back really hard on that.
The policy question I have is, what specific support do biological children in foster kinship homes need that the system is currently ignoring?
So, that is such a um, deep, loaded question because when you have biological children, your biological children, they give up a lot. They give up their space. They give up their time with their parents. They give up the calm and the stability of the home. They give up, in some cases, their safety. They are victims of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, often at the hands of the foster children that enter your home. That may sound harsh, but it's the reality. These are kids that have been exposed to horrible things. Sometimes they're just
Yes.
acting out what's been done to them because they're trying to process it. And
Right.
I don't want to make these,
Right.
I'm not trying to scare people, but this is the reality of what you're bringing into
No,
your
that's
home
the truth.
when you foster. And it's amazing. You go through all this training and you're dealing with caseworkers and people that supposedly have all this training, and they understand the impacts of all of this on the foster child, but they don't give even a minute's thought to what this does to other children, right? And
Mhm.
these children, these biological children, they don't have attachment issues. They haven't been displaced. They're part of a loving
Yeah.
home and they are strongly attached to their parents. And so they are capable of forming attachments to these foster kids. They take them into their heart, their home, they involve them in their circle of friends. They become very attached. So when you have to disrupt a placement, remove a child or a child gets reunified or all of that, it's a huge loss. And as foster parents, you don't have any right to maintain contact. The children don't have rights to any contact once a child is gone from your home. And there are no supports at all. One, for those children, those biological children that are now traumatized, depressed, sometimes blame themselves for the failure of the placement. DCFS, they wash their hands. They are done with the foster family, your failures in their mind when they have to disrupt, and off they go. And they don't care about the damage they leave behind.
So you think better support for the children of the foster parents is needed to be put in
It's
place?
tough
Or
because you want the support, but
what would you
you
say?
want the support, but you also don't want them in your business. What kind of supports would they give? Would they criticize you? You have a child that's depressed or acting out or whatever. So are you
What about therapy? Therapy for the children in the home? Would you ask for that?
This is what I think I would ask for because because I'm so distrusting of DCFS that I wouldn't want them steering that therapy or having access to the conversations in that therapy.
Okay.
I don't trust them. So
So how would you word it
how would I word it? I would say that I think that
in a
in a
perfect world?
perfect world, that you offer training and access to support groups for these children and that is closed DCFS. So yes, DCFS can provide the training, but access to support groups and that kind of thing. Foster parents have their own support groups where they get to talk and DCFS isn't part of it because they're going to share and it's going to be ugly things that they
Yeah.
share, right? And they
Yes.
don't want
Yes.
DCFS always hearing what they have to say. Well, the same needs to be true of these biological kids. They need an opportunity to talk and not have someone. Yeah,
I think that's perfectly reasonable, and I think it's a great
yeah,
idea.
yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. Of course, I haven't been a foster parent, so I don't know. No, I haven't gone through that experience. I do know that I think there's a whole lot more support that we should be given. We should have a month's leave paid with therapy going into this, and so that there's a transition, and I think that it probably is a similar thing that needs to be done in foster situations as well. But as you said, it shouldn't be government regulated. So I think that's perfectly reasonable and a very good point to make. Well, Mary, I'm so glad you shared this with us. I know that a lot of other grandparents are going to want to hear, and it gives us comfort to know that there are people out there that are winning their fights.
I had one final thought that I
No,
missed, and that was that,
please make
yeah,
it.
you put off a lot of things when you have a child that's not yours and, you're not the legal parent. You put off little things. Like we talked about piercing my granddaughter's ears. And I said, oh no, her mom's not going to go for that because it's something her mom is going to want to do. And I understand that. And then there were a lot of things like about our faith. We're Catholic. And things, we didn't read Bible stories. We didn't do that because mom is not practicing in any faith. And as foster parents, you learn you need to respect this child's culture. Don't
Yeah.
force yours onto them. So there was a lot that we put off. And then finally, just this last Sunday, we were able to get our daughter, we were able to get her baptized. And our tradition is you baptize when they're infants, when they're small. The sooner the better. And we had a baptismal gown that's been in the family 86 years. And so my mom and her siblings were baptized in it. All of me and my siblings, all of my children were baptized in it. So what we did in the case of my granddaughter, who's now 4, is we folded it up and we put it in a little purse and we strapped it over her and we explained to the priest, I know it's strange that she's going to get baptized wearing a purse, but this is why. This is the only way she is going to be able to wear this.
I'm sure he
He kind of
understood.
laughed. He said, I've not heard that one before. But just things like that you put on hold
Hmm.
because it doesn't feel right to make that decision and to leave the parent out of it, out of the experience. So you put it off. And so that has been, I think, one of the biggest parts of the healing process is now getting to like fully parent the way you would parent the rest of the other children.
Thanks. I love that story. Thank you, Mary.
Sure.
Have a wonderful evening with your family.
Thank you. You too.
I want you to step into the reflection room with me. Mary talked about the life book, the story we tell our grandkids about where they came from. Ask yourself today, am I being delicate enough with their past while being firm enough about their future safety? Are you squinting at the red tape, or are you ready to use your voice in that breakout room like Mary did? Remember, you aren't an inconvenience to the system. You are the solution the system is trying to shirk its work onto. So stand your ground. Join us next week as we welcome Janine Mouchawar. We're moving from the legal battle to the teenage flash fires. Janine is a Stanford grad parenting coach who helps us move from slam doors to strategic partnership. If you're tired of walking on eggshells with your teen, you won't want to miss this one. We are 2.7 million strong, still nurturing and still here. Whether you're folding an 86-year-old baptismal gown into a toddler's purse or fighting for a safety assessment in a Chicago park, you are the keeper of the future. Your heart is the most important asset on the balance sheet. So keep nurturing, keep leading, and I will see you in the next boardroom. Before we sign off today, I want to leave you with one final thought. Kinship care can often feel like an incredibly lonely journey. When custody happens unexpectedly, it's easy to feel like you're the only one navigating the trauma, the system, and the sheer exhaustion. But you aren't alone, and that is exactly why your story matters. You're letting another grandparent out there know that they are seen. We're building a roadmap to move families just like yours out of isolation and into long-term stability. Your unique experience holds the power to change the system for the next family. So please head over to grandparents-raising-grandchildren.org right now and fill out the contact form, or please email me personally at Laura Brazan, that's LauraBrazan, at grandparents-raising-grandchildren.org. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your heart.